You got to be fluid, I think, in life, right? Like you're going to be hit by a lot of uncertainty and a lot of change. The only thing constant is change. And that's the one thing I learned being a refugee of the Gulf War, right? We weren't sure if we were going to live or die. We were getting bombed. There was this highway of death. We were on this bus. And as I looked around me, people weren't sure if they were going to live or die. Your currency all of a sudden became invalid. You lost your homes. But everyone on that bus was singing and laughing, playing music to make reassure each other. And so I realized that, the only way to deal with uncertainty is to embrace it, be fluid like water.
Welcome to the Generation Hustle Podcast, a show that explores the world of business, entrepreneurship, and culture, all centered around the millennial. I'm your co-host Sherison alongside my good friend Amin, and this week we're talking automating access to tax credits, specifically research and development tax credit. Episode 63 is with Lloyed Lobo, co-founder and president of Boast A.I. Boast helps companies access the billions of dollars available in R&D tax credits and funding to improve insights and grow faster. Their software integrates financial, engineering, and project data to increase the speed, accuracy, and size of eligible tax incentives. In other words, Boast helps you maximize claims and innovate faster while running your business. Lloyd is an entrepreneur through and through, with a never-ending desire to keep moving, building, and hustling. We talked to Lloyd about his journey in tech, how being a refugee of the Gulf War in Kuwait shaped his mentality on life, and the plethora of lessons he's gathered through his experiences thus far. This was an incredibly informative and candid conversation, so we hope you enjoy. But maybe we can start from the beginning and maybe just kind of get like a short summary about yourself, your background, and like where you've come from to today.
Definitely, man. So I grew up partially in Canada. I was a refugee of the Gulf War in Kuwait, made my way to Canada. And then after engineering, I moved to the US. My girlfriend, now wife, was in med school in the US. And after being on the East Coast for a number of years, I worked in product and growth. I forced her and begged her to move to California because there wasn't much of a startup scene on the East Coast. And then in 2011, we moved to the San Francisco Bay Area and a few startups in failures, and now both doing well. The rest is history. It's been a great ride and a great journey. And I would say, yeah, hustle, right? The dictionary definition is obtain something by force. But I think hustle embodies the spirit of constantly moving with speed and constantly getting things done. And so, yeah, that's definitely been the journey. The way I look at hustle is to do more with less, and that's been the ride for us, right? Doing more with less.
Absolutely. I love that. And I feel like that's such an entrepreneur thing to say, do more with less. We're always expected to do more with as little resources as possible and just get as much done, right? So just on
Definitely.
that kind of, you've mentioned it already, you've had a couple successes, couple failures. I just want to like take a step back and just understand your perspective on what you define as entrepreneurship, or what is an entrepreneur? Is that something that you felt like you always were? You know what I mean?
Definitely. I don't think anyone is born an entrepreneur, right? And a lot of people say, "Oh, you got to be born an entrepreneur." I don't think so. I think any skill you can learn. Actually, my goal in 2020, my 2022 goal is all personal goals. Every 30 days, I want to learn something new. Like I enrolled in the DJ Academy, going to learn music production on the side. I'm learning parkour, those kinds of things. I'm taking breakdancing lessons with my daughter. So I think, whatever you do personally, it improves you professionally as well. You just need to open your mind to new things, keep learning. So I don't think an entrepreneur is born, but definitely skills you pick up along the way. And one of the key traits of being an entrepreneur is to navigate extreme uncertainty to do the unthinkable. I feel, right? Like the world is against you. Think about it. I come from an Indian family. My parents were working in Kuwait, hence I was born there. But I come from an Indian family. When you look at like people in Asia and Southeast Asia, the one trait is common: risk aversion, right? You go to school, then you get a job, you work many years, you get married, you go through that ladder, right? Risk aversion. And that's what I grew up with, right? I wanted to go to chef school. My mom said, no, you got to be an engineer or a doctor. So I said, okay, I'll pursue that. And I think the skills I learned in engineering, or rather not the skills, but the engineering degree, the computer engineering degree, gave me social proof on my resume to get into startups and say, hey, I'm an engineer. But like, freaking, I don't know software from underwear at the time, coding, right? One of the first skills I learned as soon as I finished engineering, I went into product and then growth and sales. That's what I wanted to do, like talk to people, because I fundamentally believe two things. One, as an entrepreneur, the best skill you can have is the ability to navigate uncertainty. And there's no better way to learn how to navigate uncertainty than to either start your own company or go in sales marketing, like sell stuff, right? Talk to people. The second thing, and I recently had Ali Tamasev on my podcast, super founder, and it's like, what is the one most common thing that is a trait between every single multi-billion dollar company founder? It's access to resources. What does that mean? That means your network. Your network is your net worth. And so I learned those two things very early on because my parents were very social, and things would just happen for them as a function of building community, being out there in the network. So I'm like, I got to build a strong network, and I got to learn how to sell, because if you can learn to sell and you have a strong network, those are some of the top skills as an entrepreneur. But I've had defined entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is about navigating extreme uncertainty to do something that otherwise wouldn't be possible. The odds are against you.
Absolutely, I love that. And just going back to what you said there. So you said you started off wanting to be a chef, and your mom kind of pushed you into being an engineer. How did you kind of deal with that? I guess just to kind of start off, how your mentality was at the time.
Beggars can't be choosers, man. I did. You know what? I'm very close to my parents. I'm everything I am because of a few people in my life and their prayers and blessings over the years. And my mom's like, you know what? My dad was an executive chef, and she's like, I never saw your dad. You never saw your dad growing up because of a very demanding job. So, do you want to live that life? Why don't you become an engineer and then you figure it out? So I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. I'll be the first engineer in my family meaning my from my mom's side and my dad's side. I was the first engineer across, like, they have 10. My dad has 5 siblings, mom has 10, so it was a matter of pride. So I said I'll do it. And so really, you got to be fluid, I think, in life, right? Like, you're going to be hit by a lot of uncertainty and a lot of change. The only thing constant is change. And that's the one thing I learned being a refugee of the Gulf War, right? We weren't sure if we were going to live or die. We were getting bombed. There was this highway of death. We were on this bus. And as I looked around me, people weren't sure if they were going to live or die. Your currency all of a sudden became invalid. You lost your homes. But everyone on that bus was singing and laughing, playing music to make reassure each other. And so I realized that, the only way to deal with uncertainty is to embrace it, be fluid like water. And then the second thing I realized, which ties to my your network is your net worth, it's neither the destination. You know how people say, oh, it's not the destination, it's the journey. And some people say it's the destination. I say it's neither the destination nor the journey, but the companions, the people you surround yourself, that matter the most.
Absolutely. That's an incredible story, especially with the bus. I can't even imagine what that would feel like, but it instills a certain perspective in your life, right? Especially when you come to this side of the world where most of us don't even have that kind of exposure. And we think, some of the smallest things is the worst thing that can happen to us. And we don't have that perspective, right? And so do you feel like that gives you kind of an advantage in a sense now that you've kind of established yourself here?
I think if you don't have those kinds of advantages, you should engineer the ability to deal with uncertainty in your life,
How do we
right?
do that? I like that point. How do we do that?
How do you engineer uncertainty? So I'll tell you, pain is the precondition for growth. Look at it. When you go to work out in the gym, you see these bodybuilders. Compare a bodybuilder with the maintenance guy who lifts boxes the same, your Amazon or whatever, right? They don't look jacked or ripped. I mean, they somewhat do, but your bodybuilder is ripped, right? Your athletes. Why? Because they keep doing progressive overload. There's this concept of progressive overload. You keep doing 1% better every day, add new uncertainty to your life, lift heavier, do more reps, uh, do things that you hadn't done the previous day, or do things that you're not used to doing. What happens is when you set in a routine, your body becomes adjusted to that routine. And so uncertainty means trying and doing new things that you otherwise hadn't done. And like, it's like leveling up in a video game, right? Like, now you conquered this boss. Now you become better for it. You can go back and play that same stage, and you know the techniques to win it. Now you go for the next one and the next one and the next one. And so engineering uncertainty, great ways to do that is, start a side hustle, right? You're going to learn marketing, sales. You're going to learn so many things. Or maybe go and enroll in a sport. Maybe say, you know what, I'm going to train for a bodybuilding contest, or you know what, I'm going to train parkour, or I'm going to train martial arts, or I'm going to learn something that pushes me to my limit and makes me better. But whatever you do, your mind, if you train your mind to deal with uncertainty and overcome that task, you're just going to overall be better for it. Your brain or your body doesn't realize, oh, this is the business me and this is the personal me, right? Just push yourself through that. And I found that I crave uncertainty. So I'll tell you, I've lived in 9 different cities: Kuwait, Dubai, Toronto, Thunder Bay, Calgary, Vancouver a little bit, Toronto, Philly, New Jersey, and then San Francisco. And I just moved to Austin. And every few years, once I'm comfortable and I feel like, I've gotten everything there, I started getting restless. And I'm like, I got to move to a new place. I just moved to Austin last weekend. And I feel like new experiences, uncertainty, it's just going to make you better. And I feel like anytime you change the environment you're in, your brains open up to new ideas, new possibilities. Or you can be like, fixed minded and say, oh, I'm going to fail, I'm going to fail, I'm going to fail. Victory starts in the mind. Success starts in the mind. You got to say whatever you think and believe and you say, you can achieve, right? That's how I look at it. So for example, let's say you're working a 9 to 5 job and you're really risk averse. You want to start that side hustle, and maybe starting that side hustle or quitting your job to put everything on the line is going to be really tough. So how do you train yourself? Maybe go and take a class in something that requires physical mental strain. Maybe train for an Ironman, maybe, or even something simpler, train for a 5 mile, or maybe take something that requires you in a short period of time to compete, right? Another way is, they do these startup weekends, these 3-day startup weekends, where in 3 days you need to validate the idea, come up with the MVP, and pitch to an audience, right? So there are many things where you put yourself in uncertainty, and then you start leveling up. It's not like, oh, I'm going to quit everything in one day and just build Rome in a day. You maybe start putting yourself in situations where off hours on the weekends, you sort of train yourself to work through uncertainty. Then you can work up to saying, okay, you know what, maybe I'll do a side hustle, pick a project, just do it, or help somebody else on a project and just do it. Like for me, the side hustle was building the Traction community. It's got 110,000 subscribers now. We do 2 webinars a week, dinners in different cities, conferences. But when we started Boast, we wanted to build community. Our fundamental belief has been, fall in love with your customer, help them become successful beyond your product or service. If you build a community, you won't become a commodity. And look at it: Nike, Apple, HubSpot, Gainsight, Harley Davidson, they're all commodities eventually, right? Yesterday's wow feature becomes today's option and becomes tomorrow's commodity. But if you build a community, you won't become a commodity. But when we first wanted to host our first conference, I got no budget. So I did it as a side hustle, lined up all the volunteers, cold emailed speakers, A B tested messaging, send e-blasts, try to convince speakers, try to convince sponsors. The conference came together. We got hundreds of people. Every major CEO from Twilio to Postmates was there. And then, we did this conference in an EDM hall because we didn't have the budget. And we got more speakers than we could confirm. So we got what do you call it, a smoke machine backstage. And we said every time somebody hits 15 minutes, we switch on the smoke. They get startled. Everyone starts clapping. When we went through end of the night, TechCrunch was interviewing Meerkat's founder. They were on stage, and the backstage started smoking. And Frederic from TechCrunch is like, "Why is Lloyd releasing the smoke?" We just went on stage, and we realized that the smoke machine had run out of water, and the drapes were catching fire. So that's how bootstrapped it was, right? The drapes were catching fire. Imagine, we almost burned down the stage on the first Traction conference. And so what I'm saying is, those are things of uncertainty. But you got to just do it, man. The only thing constant is change.
And it sounds like a lot of your personal development and how you view that is it's tied to that, and tying different things, and tied to trying different experiences just to get you out of your comfort zone.
Exactly. Initially what happens is it's very, very difficult. You resist it and whatnot. But then eventually it becomes in your DNA and then you crave it. And then when you don't do something that's full of uncertainty, you start losing your mind. It becomes a muscle. You're like, you know what? This I'm too comfortable in this zone, right? Like me in San Francisco last 10 years, I got to get out of here. There was no reason to get out of there. My
Yeah.
friends, family, we've rented our place there, but we were like, you know what? It's time to embrace something new, meet new people. Life is short, man. Life is really short. There's theories. Is it long? Is it short? I feel like life just flies by, and so I love experiences because new experiences bring new uncertainties, and it's just exciting.
Absolutely. I want to take a minute to kind of talk to you about your mindset. Obviously, when you're going through all these changes or kind of putting yourself into these situations, you're going to have successes, you're going to have failures, and it changes you, it develops you into the person that you are today. But how do you kind of manage your mental mindset? And I ask that because it can be overwhelming when you don't succeed at something. It can be kind of discouraging. You need to take into account your mental health. Obviously, you have a family as well. So balancing all those things, like what do you do that helps you kind of balance that and keep your mental health in check?
Mental health is a great topic that no one talks about, right? And it is something that needs a lot of attention. And I'll tell you a few things. I've faced extreme depression. I've felt suicidal at times. I almost died of COVID last year, and I was hospitalized, unable to breathe. I felt suicidal during that time. I'm like, it's the most painful thing. Just I want it to be over with. I lost a kid. We were expecting twins in 2018, and one passed. It was very hard. So seeing a lot of hardship and seeing a lot of sort of success as well, right? Like I feel like my journey did a startup or joined a startup in product in 2007. That startup failed. Then me and my wife were to get married. The wedding was called off because I was part of a few failures, and parents were against. Then we got married. Then did a couple of startups that failed. Then Boast was successful, but in between there lost a kid after the fundraise, almost died of COVID. So there's ups and downs, right? And like I said, it's neither the destination nor the journey, but the companions that matter the most. You go through this curve, right? Like you sort of as an entrepreneur, you're like, you're excited, this is, then yeah, you have a down, this is hard, it's working, I screwed up, oh, everything is failing, I'm gonna go bankrupt. You go through this like journey like a drunken, like an entrepreneur's journey is like a drunken person. Like you're drunk or you're high, right? Like one day it's good, next moment it's bad, next thing everything is working, then everything is failing, imposter syndrome. It's important to ultimately have this mindset that life and business is a marathon, it's not a sprint, right? And one of the key learnings for me came during COVID when I was hospitalized, and I said to myself, what if I died today? The only thing that would matter would be the people around me, my family. I hadn't spent enough time with them. And it's important to also realize that it's not the money in your bank, but the people around your tombstone that matter. And so how do you take care of your mental health? Because if you're weak mentally, here are a few things that's going to happen. Your business is going to suffer, and your personal life is going to suffer, right? So the first thing is accepting that I have mental health issues. Like freaking sit down, there's something wrong with me, I'm losing my mind, I'm getting depressed. The first thing is recognizing that is step number one, right? And then you start making changes. um, Prioritize physical health, I say. Like there's a few rules I've formulated over the years of going through this, sort of feeling suicidal, depressed, all of that stuff in between of successes and failures. Work out or play a sport, do it regularly. Incorporate this concept of progressive overload that I said, doing a little more or a little better every day, it compounds, right? Like compound interest. You're doing lifting more, or doing more reps, that kind of thing. And I feel like exercise releases endorphins in your brains that create the sense of calm, and reduces the sense of low and depression, right? Follow a clean diet, like, reduce sugar, refined sugars, drink lots of water, eat healthy. There's a lot of apps I use, like Freeletics to MyFitnessPal, and then practicing mindfulness, right? That's another thing. um, Sit somewhere and just meditate. And if meditation is really hard for you, when you wake up in the morning, just go for a walk, go for a long walk, and just throw some music, right? Throw some calming music or whatever music you like, but just go for a long walk. I try to do that every day, like go for a sort of mid intensity walk, maybe 45 minutes to an hour. I typically like to listen to an audiobook, but sometimes I'll listen to, all kinds of music. Third thing is, ties to my your network is your net worth. Um, Build a support system of peers that you can talk to, right? Join a mastermind. I'm a part of two groups with On Deck, where I talk about everything from mental health to personal well-being to business. Yeah. See a therapist or a coach. Most people think I'm crazy probably coming on a podcast and saying see a therapist or a coach. No, like, we got to talk about these things, right? When you're depressed, or to your mental health is also a muscle, right? And you got to train it, right? Working out is one aspect, sleeping well, like, get a good bed, make good habits to sleep, have chia seeds or melatonin so you can relax, go for long walks. First thing in the morning when you wake up, I believe in exercising, like six or whatever. And some people think it's crazy, but it sets you up for the day. It calms you. And there are times where I don't do it, and I do it, and I see the difference, right? Building a group of friends that you can call upon that check on you is important, and I have that. I'm very open with everyone. Seeing a therapist or a coach, you have a coach for everything. Your brain your brain is your biggest business. Your personal well-being is your biggest business. If you don't take care of that, how will you take care of anything, right? Everyone, Tiger Woods to um, Ronaldo, they all have coaches. Why don't you see a therapist or a coach, right? Set intentional boundaries for personal time. For the last 30 days, I have done a digital detox. I removed all the apps from my phone. The only thing is messaging, so you can text me in matters of emergency. I removed LinkedIn, I removed Slack, I removed Facebook, I removed everything, right? So you know what that has done for me is it's reduced my desire for FOMO. There's no desire to respond immediately, to see likes, to see shares, any of this. Like, I've lost the sense of urgency. And if you look at it, 9 out of 10 things are not urgent. And if something is urgent and emergent and emergency, people will text me, right? So that's calmed my brain down. I'm sleeping better and also spending more time with my kids. So now my kids are like, "Oh, you're never on your phone. Great, we love you." Like, they went from saying "mommy, mommy, mommy" to "daddy, daddy, daddy," and that's really good. Like, you're in control of your brain. So I set those intentional boundaries. The other thing, as a business owner, what you can do is hire VPs or execs to take the load off you sooner than you need them, right? Because they become a creative, they can create time for you. And then the disconnection I talked about. Maybe try, right? This year I promised myself every 30 days I'm going to try something new. So I've removed all the apps from my phone. I feel phenomenal. I'm able to get 10,000 steps a day. I'm able to read or listen to music. I'm able to work out. It creates all this time because, the amount of time, if you add up opening apps, responding, being reactive, um, it's very, very time consuming, and it's also not good for your brain, I feel. Right now, I feel more like I'm in control. The other thing is, learn something new, man. The power of learning is huge, right? So something as simple as, you can join masterclass.com if everything is online, and there's, Gordon Ramsay teaches cooking, um, Annie Leibovitz teaches photography, you got Malcolm Gladwell, he teaches learning. I mean, Austin, so I was talking about the Franklin's barbecue, which is the most popular. He has a course on smoking, right? Or you can join something like an On Deck or Coursera, but like, learn something new. Like I said, right? Like, I enrolled in DJ classes, DJ Academy, and yesterday was my first day, and I spent 2 hours spinning. I don't even know how the time went. I love music, all kinds of music, so I'm fusing like Bollywood with reggaeton and house, and I was like, he's like, "Hey, it's time for you to go." I'm like, "Oh my god!" You when you learn things, right? It opens your brain. happiness ultimately kills depression, right? So, do things that make happy, and learning something new also creates the sense of progress, which then increases endorphins. um, and then, you know perform acts of service and appreciation. The joy of giving is second to none. And Traction is a nonprofit. We donate everything that comes from it, and I get emails every day, oh, you had this speaker, or you made an intro to such and such person, or whatever, and I raised my round from it, or I met X candidate, or Y sort of investor, or key hire from it, and that makes me happy, right? The joy of giving is second to none. So those are, like, to summarize, I think I have like 7 steps I've outlined: is prioritize your physical health, practice mindfulness, go for a walk, be calm, and just think, kind of thing. um, Build a support system of peers, see a therapist, set intentional boundaries, learn something new, and perform acts of service and kindness ultimately. Because if you don't take care of yourself, you're not going to be able to take care of your family or your business.
Absolutely. I love that list. I feel like you touch on every aspect of kind of your well being for anyone, right? And that's transferable to kind of any aspect of life. And one of the big things that you touched on in there, especially, and I appreciate you being so candid about, your story and the things that you've been through, because it reflects on how you've evolved and how you've become this person. But one of the things that you mentioned there is the importance of the network and the people around you. And I bring that up because we found this quote from yours where you say that everyone is replaceable is another bullshit business trope that needs to be put to rest. And I feel like this kind of reflects your importance of people. But can you expand on that and what that means to you?
Definitely, right? So, as leaders, we sort of create this vibe that everyone is replaceable. um and if you sort of run your life and your business based on everyone is replaceable, you're not going to last very long, right? So the way I look at it is, um, you can pick one of three things in life, right? Um, Power, money, or impact. If you focus on power, you destroy relationships eventually. If you focus on money, you make really short-term decisions. If you want to build something lasting and make it a marathon, not a sprint, you got to focus on impact, right? Impact is the most important thing, right? And with this venture backed and raising and hyper growth and hyper scale and blitz scaling, leaders tend to forget that. And I've seen a lot of leaders develop this mindset, that everyone is replaceable. But we're in a world where people have more options than ever before, right? Think about it. What happened with the better.com, where fired a lot of people, then it got recorded, he got replaced. I feel the biggest companies of the future will be built on a culture of empathy and community, right? And so it's important. See, passion is hard to replace. I often say two things transcend companies. One is your relationships. I've worked with people before they came to work at Boast, even those companies didn't work out. Second thing is your passion. If you're really passionate about something, a skill, a craft, an art, or the business mission, but you're being treated like shit, you'll go and do that somewhere else, right?
Exactly.
You can do this. So your passion and your relationships transcend companies. And so I feel like, having this mindset of everyone is replaceable is bullshit. Passion is hard to replace. It's much harder to hire and onboard replacements than to inspire, motivate, and retain the existing, right? And one of the best ways to motivate people is to just proactively recognize them. You
Absolutely.
build good connections, appreciate people, say thank you more often, reward them, and create opportunities for them before they ask. Coach them to become better versions of themselves, right? Your people should feel important and valued to keep that passion alive. And so everyone is replaceable is like, hey, I worked myself out of a job to a better job to do something better in this company or somewhere else, versus, oh, I can, replace you with somebody else,
Yeah.
right? And you know what? The cost of training and finding and onboarding another person is just very taxing on the business and the culture.
Right. And I feel like that's one of the fundamental differences between kind of an established company and a startup. kind of that replaceable feeling comes in those bigger companies where they can just replace you really quickly with an HR team, and they'll just have a recruiter find someone to do your task. But they can't get that passion, like you said, right? And I think that's where startups come in and um, provide you a different outlet, right? A lot of people who work in startups are there not for the money or anything. It's just they love what you're doing.
Exactly. Exactly. I have this also another thesis on what's important to people, which I pieced together from my learnings and stuff. Like, what do people really want? And I call it the camper framework: connection, autonomy, mastery, purpose, energy, and recognition. Being in a company or a community should be like riding up, the Peloton, which is very famous right now. When you hop on the bike, you're connected to the people around you, and you know who's there. You're seeing the leaderboard. You have this connection. Autonomy, because you're in charge, you know what the metrics are, the goal is, you're in charge of your own destiny. Mastery, because you keep getting better and better and better, you're leveling up and you're conquering new hurdles. Purpose, there's a great sense of purpose, better health. Energy, you're energized with this, whatever is happening, you have a coach that's pumping you up. And recognition, you're earning badges and rewards along the way. Shouldn't company cultures be designed like that, right? You
Yeah,
feel this great sense of connection. Your boss tells you the vision, the values, and the metrics. Values are important so you don't do evil things to get to the outcome, but you're autonomous. You bring the execution, they give you the mission, the metrics, the values, right? Mastery, every time you achieve something, you unlock the opportunity to do something bigger and you get better. Sense of purpose. Like, our purpose at Boast is not to automate tax credits, it's to help innovators change the world. Every dollar spent in innovation returns 20 to the universe. Vaccines to robots to clean drinking water is a function of innovation. Yet in the last 15 years, 50% of the Fortune 500 companies have evaporated because they haven't had been successful at innovating, right? And so our mission is to help innovators change the world, and that's the purpose. That's what people can attach to. Energy, on people to feel like pumped. They come in day out and they're energized by the, negative energy sort of creates toxicity, and positive energy creates goodwill, right? Extreme desire to conquer the unthinkable, right? And then the last thing is recognition, engineering recognition into your company culture, so you're saying thank you deliberately and more often and more frequently. People shouldn't ask for raises. People should ask for where's my thank you. You should look to reward them, and that's what I feel how communities and company cultures should be designed. Camper.
I haven't heard that before, but all the topics or like the components of it, I definitely resonate with. So I appreciate you sharing that. And you've already brought it up, Boast AI, and kind of a little bit about what we do. But let's get right into it. Let's talk about Boast AI, where you guys are making a cumbersome process around R&D credits much simpler. So first off, can you kind of tell us where the idea for Boast came from, and then we'll get into what R&D credits are and why they're such a vital tool for the growth of startups.
Definitely. So my co-founder and I both studied engineering together. We've been friends for a very long time. I'm his daughter's godfather and vice versa. After engineering, he worked in technology, then he did a startup that didn't work out. So he studied accounting, and his unique combination of accounting and engineering got him into the world of tax credits. And after engineering, I moved into product and growth, moved to the US. And he called me one day and said, "Hey, man, globally, hundreds of billions of dollars are given in government funding and R&D tax credits to support businesses, but it's a cumbersome application process because mostly accountants come in after the end of the year and tell a CTO, tell me what you did in R&D last year that meets this narrow criteria." It's prone to expensive audits, which is time consuming again, and it takes a long time to get the money. And so Alex had the R&D tax credit skill set. I had the product and growth mindset. And so we came together to say, hey, let's integrate with the company's tech and financial systems to get them more money faster for less time and risk. How do you prepare claims? How do you basically identify what qualifies, prepare the claim, and finance it so people can get access to this money? And then the long term mission is, how do you help companies innovate faster? Yeah, they want R&D credits to fund their business, so you get them the funding sooner. Then they want the funding to accelerate innovation. So can you tell them who they should hire, what projects they should invest in, how to overall accelerate the speed of their innovation? And we do that through Boast, and we do that through our traction community, helping innovators become successful.
That's such a great tool to have, especially because, like you said, it can give you access to the funding that you desperately may need, or just if it's extra funding that you can utilize elsewhere. Right? There's so many of this that's missed out on, especially government funding. I think that's such a huge concept for small businesses where they lack the expertise or understanding and how to get that funding. So, can you kind of
Definitely.
explain how your platform is doing that for these companies?
Definitely, yeah. So we integrate with the company's technical and financial systems, like so if they use project management system like Jira, GitHub, etc., and we integrate with their payroll and bookkeeping systems and banking systems, and we stitch that data in real time through the year to then identify work that qualifies and doesn't. And then we have in-house engineers and CPAs um, that make sense of it all, do the last mile stuff like filing it with the government. If the government audits them, defend them in the audit. And then we have $100 million fund that gives them access to the money sooner so they don't have to wait for government processing times.
That's
So
incredible.
keeping it as simple as possible.
Are you able to share any like success stories or any stories that you'd be willing to share about your clients or any startups that you've worked with?
Yeah, definitely. We work with over 1,000 companies. We've worked with Pluralock, which IPO'd. We work with Respect Group. We partnered with Lazarides Institute, Humi, which is one of the most popular payroll companies in Canada, Rival Technologies, which is in the market research space. So a lot of companies, both big and small, from startups to enterprises, we've worked with basically over a thousand customers over the years, and then some of the biggest names in tech from Twilio to Shopify leadership has engaged with our traction community as well.
Just to spur innovation and make this process much simpler, is there anything that stands out to you that governments can do to make it easier for companies to get these credits or get the funding that they need?
Definitely, I think the government can reduce red tape for sure, rather reduce the complexity. What the government can also do is increase the number of dollars going to more companies, increase awareness, those kinds of things, reduce the timeline, reduce the red tape, and increase the dollars. Because ultimately, innovation is driving the economy, right? And if you look at it, when we started the company, we were two guys in a spare bedroom. Everyone would say, "Oh, man, why are you going after startups? All the startups are failing. You'll not succeed." Today, we have a bigger brand than most. We have bigger brand and R&D credits than our competitors, and it's because we bet on the startups. We've said we're going to focus on startups, help innovators basically become successful. We built a massive community to give them the resources, and startups are succeeding, right? And so, if the government reduces the red tape and basically increases the amount of money, and I think ultimately that's good for the economy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That makes so much sense. One thing I wanted to understand, kind of like where you want to take Boast from here now, is what do you see for the future of Boast, right? Like how do you want to scale this even further, and where do you want to take it for the future?
Definitely, I think we started with automating tax credits. Now we're also financing the tax credits, and the next phase will be saying, what do you do with this money? How do you innovate faster, right? Think about it. Fall in love with your customer and their problem, not the solution. Companies want money to innovate faster. So we want to be the solution by which people will leverage Boast to accelerate innovation. Yeah, I get tax credits. Yeah, I get the tax credits and the funding sooner. But then, yeah, based on the data they're collecting, they can give me insight on what projects I should invest in, who I should hire, make informed decisions to accelerate innovation. And then they got this massive community through which I can get the resources and the knowledge to become successful. So that's the ultimate goal, is to be the system of acceleration for innovation.
For sure. So, kind of first step is getting them the funding and the access to the credits, and then kind of providing them kind of like an advisory surface on how to use that funding. So you would say,
Yeah, like more like automated analytics and
okay.
intelligence based on the data we gather from them.
Going back to kind of the funding and securing funding, you've actually successfully raised $100 million round, which is just insane. So first off, congratulations on that. That's an incredible feat. Um, Can you walk us through how that was for you? Obviously, a lot of founders struggle with finding the right investors when it comes to raising a round, um, especially ones that are aligned to your values and what you want to accomplish. So, can you kind of speak to that process, how you went about finding a suitable investment partners and how that came about?
Yeah, definitely. Let me break down the funding as well. A little may seem a little out of whack, right? So we raised a 23 million USD Series A, or 30 million Canadian Series A, however we're going to slice it. And then we did a 100 million credit facility, which is debt, which is not equity around. And that 100 million fund we raised is to finance the tax credits, right? So combined, we took a lot of money. So the way I look at it, and the 100 million doesn't impact our equity. It's non-dilutive. It's money to fund to do cash advances against tax credits that people are waiting for 6, 9, 12 months from the government. That's the way that's the way to describe it. So I think the most important thing is, it's funny. We met our investors through our traction community. That's why I say, if you build a community, you won't become a commodity. We were just out there. The Radiant Capital guys came and spoke at one of our events. They got to know me. Then I introduced them to Alex. We got to know each other. We built a good relationship over the few months. We weren't raising. We were a profitable company. And then, they came with a lot of homework on the space, and they understood the space, I felt like, almost as well as us, or even better. And then we did some back channel references on them, and it all turned really well. And then it just came together very, very quickly. And I would say, focus on the relationship, not the transaction. If you treat people like a transaction on the way in, they're going to treat you like a transaction on the way out. If you optimize for the highest valuation, what's going to happen? The first time the biggest roadblock hits, either they're out of there or you're out of there, right? If you find people who really care about your company's purpose and mission, and you have a relationship with them, they're going to get help you get through difficult times. They're going to be there like a partner, and we wanted a partner. That's why we didn't find many investors. So there's all these party rounds with every major investor investing. Ultimately, you want an investor that's going to be there with you to guide you through the different phases and challenges. If you just want like brand names on there, what's the point of that? Right now, we're in a market where there's more capital than ever before. You can go and take debt, right? Ultimately, your goal is to preserve your equity as a founder. So that's how I look at it: is focus on the partner, focus on the relationship, not the transaction. You want people who are going to be with you through the journey for the long haul, because they're passionate about you and the purpose of the business, and they're going to bring new ideas and connections. And that's why we have one investor. They've been great. I've been a part of other venture backed companies, so I know the drill and the drama, the highs and the lows, right? So optimize for the relationship always is the advice I would give. The other thing is, the market's bonkers right now, right? People used to raise every 18 months. Now people are raising like every 3 to 6 months. And I would say is, like, as a founder, your focus should be on running your business. So if you foresee raising, the market is hot, just keep it a quick, tight process, 4 to 5 weeks. Week one, talk to investors, share the data, answer any questions, and try to wrap up things quickly rather than making it a never-ending process. Because get back to doing the most valuable thing, which is running and growing your business, which is evangelizing, hiring, strategy, those kinds of things.
Right, right. While you're going through that process, and I'm glad you mentioned that, kind of just aligning your values and just understanding what the best fit is. But when you're going through those terms and when you're going through those conversations, um, how did you get good at negotiating? Right, like obviously there's always a give and take with the terms, and something that's you want something that's beneficial for both parties, but you're always going to have some leeway here and there. And you alluded to it as well, like you didn't have a lot of investors that were interested because of how you wanted to proceed with your business. So
Yeah,
how
we
did you?
we I think the way to look at it is, like, we picked the investor that we wanted to, right? Um, and for whatever it's worth, valuations and negotiation is driven by FOMO. We're in a founder market night right now. So if you have great traction, meaning I'm growing 100% year over year, my net revenue retention is over 100%, and I have high gross margin over 80%. We're in a founder market right now. If you have a lot of VCs at the table, you can dictate the pace. Unfortunately, valuations and everything else seems like it's driven by FOMO more than anything else. There's lots of capital in the market. And so the best way to figure out what's right for you, who's right for you, is to just speak to a lot of people and don't raise in a desperation mode. You're never going to be able to be happy, right? We didn't need the money. We took our time getting to know our investors and then it came together, right? So do that. Date a lot of people, get to know them, see if they're genuinely interested and passionate about your business. If you have the liberty, right? Don't ever raise like, oh shit, I'm going to go bankrupt in 2 months. I need to raise right now. Don't ever do that. Raise money like you don't need it. You're
Right.
not raising money. Think about it this way: you're bringing on a business partner. So that's what you need to think. So get to know them. It's not like, Dragon's Den and TechCrunch and everything else has like screwed this concept up, right? It's like you're basically praying to God to grant you a miracle kind of thing, right? And the VCs are on a pedestal. It should be a partnership. Think about it. You bring a new partner, and if it doesn't work out, you got to explore alternative sources of capital to grow your business. And so talk to lots and lots of people, vet them, get to know them. A great way to get to know them is, ask them for intros to their portfolio companies, for referrals, right? Like ask them for intros to referrals. And it's a two-way street, man. A partnership is two-way street. It's not one way. So whenever I meet somebody, I try to walk away with what can I connect them with, and I try to make that connection right away. So if it's a VC, can I make some intros? Can I get them to speak at Traction? Can I make some connection for their portfolio company? Try to do that right away. And there's this sort of concept of reciprocity, right? If you help somebody 2 or 3 times without expecting anything in return, then they feel like they got to as well. So that's how you build relationships with VCs. Like keep them updated, make intros for them, ask them for stuff, ask them for advice. Like just go about building a relationship genuinely, like you could with other people. And I fundamentally believe that the best way to do that is by giving first. And over time you'll get to know a bunch of them. You'll schedule calls, maybe, hey, I wanted to get your feedback on something, and see how gracious they are with their time, how critical their feedback is, and whatnot. And then you'll come to the conclusion that when I am raising, you know who you want at the table. And more importantly, maybe your raise will happen without even going out to the market, right?
For sure. I just wanted to pinpoint a couple things that you said there. I love that you kind of singled out Dragon's Den and how we kind of view entrepreneurs and raising rounds. Because especially with social media, I think entrepreneurship has kind of taken like a glamoury role now within society. People look at it like it's fun to do, but they don't really understand the ins and outs of it and how tough it can be. And also with investors, it's like you I haven't heard that from someone before where they say view it like you're a business partner rather than you're asking for a favor, right? And a lot of how we frame it looks like you're just going to an investor and begging for money, which is not how it should be.
Exactly. And that's, focus on learning is the way I would look at it. Focus on the learning, focus on building relationships, focus on a long road ahead. Life and business is a marathon, it's not a sprint, right?
For sure. One question I had for you is around storytelling, and I think it's important when it comes to investments, when you're looking to raise rounds or find business partners that are suitable for you. But the reason I bring it up is because I feel like you presented your career journey and your story so well, and how you've gotten from A to B to C into today. So, can you kind of speak to the importance of the skill of storytelling? Is that something that you worked on, or is that something that's just come naturally to you?
That's what I said, right? The first two things in life that I wanted to learn immediately, throwing myself into uncertainty. I went into sales and product right away. Actually, my first job was in sales. Then, for the same company, I transitioned into product. And both jobs require you to sell actively, like you're talking, you're selling, you're communicating. And then I focused on building my network, right, by giving, by being out there. So I fundamentally believe this, right? The job of a leader is to build, inspire, and motivate a team to deliver. Delivery is the lagging indicator. If you build, inspire, and motivate a team, they will deliver. So then, how do you do that? Clearly articulating and communicating your vision to excite, inspire, and motivate those people is the most important skill to have. It's not a one and done activity, right? As a leader, you're evangelizing internally, externally, to recruits, to press, to everyone. So you got to clearly articulate and communicate your vision to excite, inspire, and motivate people, right? You got to do this day in, day out, because excited, inspired, and motivated people can move mountains, right? And so the most important skill you can learn is communicating. And think about that. How do you fit communication across that camper framework? People want connection, autonomy, mastery, purpose, energy, recognition. Everything, every piece in that puzzle or framework ties to communication. And so you got to understand, how do I clearly articulate? So the things I do, hacks I do, is I do 2 interviews a week, live interviews, traction, right? I've interviewed over 300 people over the last few years. What you're doing is great. I public speak. I speak on other podcasts like this, so it improves my clarity. Right? People send me questions ahead of time, and then eventually everything becomes a muscle, where it's like, you know what, I learned it, now I can flex it, kind of thing. Jeff Lawson, I had the CEO of Twilio on my podcast last year, and he said the same thing. He's a shy engineer who became one of the best speakers I know in tech, probably the best speaker in SaaS. He recommended this book called, um, I think it was, I got to look it up. It's a great book. And then he said, just do it more often. Put yourself in situations where you got to clearly articulate your vision. You got to clearly speak. You got to explain things, and do that on a daily basis. Right.
For sure. And I think that goes back to your earlier point of just, putting yourself in discomfort, putting yourself in new situations, new experiences as much as you can, right? And that's what inspires the learning.
Exactly.
I think you're doing some incredible work with Boast AI and Traction. You have a really good vision in how you want to create impact, and I think that's important for how we proceed in our careers and in our lives. And it's inspirational to others, right? Even for us here at the podcast, is to meet founders like you, where you are aligning your values in life to what you're doing in work. I think that's such an inspirational and amazing thing to see, because so many of us are or can be lost in our paths and just kind of going through the motions of, like you said, like a 9 to 5 or something like that. So creating impact and understanding the impact that we're making is something that seems to come natural to you. Is there anything any piece of advice that you would give to any founders, anyone in the startup space right now, anyone looking to just create something of their own, to kind of round out this conversation?
You know, I think the most important thing is, having a big vision, but working backwards from it. You need to have a goal, right? I need to get to 100,000 subscribers. I need to make X, and then work backwards from it and start today, right?
Start today.
Uh, Start today. Start today. Take a small step, and that small step can be doing something. It's like, you ever wake up and you're like, oh shit, I just don't want to work out today, man. Just get up and get moving without thinking, right? Victory starts in the mind. Just get up, get out, and start moving. Even if you don't have to, like, if you don't feel like doing a full workout one day, just walking for half an hour, low mid intensity, steady
Right.
state is fine. But you're getting out, just get started, I say, right? Get moving.
I love it. I love it. Lloyd, one thing we like to do to kind of end off our podcast is just do a lightning round where we toss some quick questions at you and just to understand you a bit better, less business related, or it could be business related. And we just want to hear the first thing that comes to mind.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, first off, and you were looking for this already, so you may not have an answer for this, but maybe you have a different answer. Do you have a favorite book or movie that you refer back to?
you know um I hate reading, so I recently started listening to audiobooks and walking. But my hack to overcome reading is interview two smart people I know every week. And so, you can go to the Traction podcast, or on YouTube, search Traction Conf. I follow a lot of people. I believe in like micro learnings, and so I follow Jason Lemkin. I read everything he writes on SaaStr, and then just a few other things. Like, I like this. I like stories. So Masters of Scale and Blitzscaling are two really good books by Reid Hoffman, and learn that. And then the rest is just me picking up a new skill and trying to learn something.
For sure. I love it. I love it. Next question here. Um, if you could have dinner with one person at any point in time, who would that be? Do you have a dinner a dinner guest that you would like?
A dinner guest, and it could be anybody.
Anybody at any point in time.
Oh man, you know what? Um, I miss here. Maybe Who do I look up to the most? Like, who do I want to meet? Ah, tough to say, man.
Yeah,
Tough to
too many
tough.
idols.
There. It's not idols. There's too many people who are very interesting to me. Maybe it would be somebody from the Bollywood industry.
All right, you're a movie fan. Okay, I like it.
Okay. Cool.
And one more question here. Can you tell us the industry that excites you the most today? If you had to think about any industry that's kind of exploding right now, or anything that's on the cusp of something great, what excites you today?
I love this concept where everyone can become a creator. I look at my kids and I'm like, you know what? They can become micro entrepreneurs themselves by creating content. I'm bullish on the cusp of Web3 and the creator economy where people will be in charge of their own destiny to create things and monetize it and live great experiential lives and create great financially free experiential lives for themselves. Our grandparents cared about putting things on the table, right? Like food on the table. They cared about just feeding the family. My parents, I feel, cared about things, and to some extent we do as well, but our generation and beyond is going to care about experiences. And this whole thing about, like, TikTok and YouTube and Instagram, and has enabled a lot of these. There's so many resources, no code and everything else. It's inspired creators to monetize their creations and create lifestyles for themselves like never before.
Absolutely. The creator economy is changing lives and continuing to become bigger than what it is. And it's exciting to see, right? And we're all part of that.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
Lloyd, this was such a great conversation. Before we end off here, can you tell us where we can find you, where we can connect with you, whether that's Traction or Boast AI, or anything, or anywhere else that you're active on?
Definitely. So I am active on LinkedIn for the most, and then go to my YouTube channel, search Traction Conf on YouTube, and then I have a podcast coming out. So just search my name on Spotify and type Traction.